All right, and we do have on set Mr. Kelvon Morris, Minority Leader. And good morning and welcome, sir.
Good morning, Brother B. Always a pleasure. Good morning, all of Tobago, Trinidad and Tobago.
All right, so our topic is feeling the pain. When you're feeling the pain, what pain is it that you're feeling, and what is it that is, most, painful for the people of Tobago in your view?
Well, Brother B, this pain is one that goes to the really about the bread and butter issues or the lack thereof. And when you walk go in any community where you go to the corner store, a restaurant, a bar, and you ask how things, and people are telling you things are in fact extremely difficult at this time. I met with two young men yesterday, and I was talking to them just about opportunities and how we go about getting opportunities. And you talk to them about jobs. And that has been one of the things that is on the mouths of everybody in terms of how difficult it is to find employment in Tobago. So I asked them about the 10 on, 10 off. And to my amazement, what happens with that opportunity is that notwithstanding that you may get pay, in fact, you take very long to get pay, and you're working only 10 days for the month. So you could imagine already getting a very small pay and have to wait a long time for it. And on top of waiting, you don't have any kind of job tenureship, so you can't go to the credit union, you can't go to the bank for a loan. If you want to fix up your house, buy a car, you can't do anything. And therefore, this is the kind of pain that Tobagonians are crying out about. You look in the THA, for example, the workers who are on contract, and we have a lot of that. After they do their 3-year contract, after working for 3 years on contract, you have something called gratuity. These workers are telling me, many of them since 2021, they have not collected gratuity. So you could imagine that is something you would look forward to as a lump sum after you done work a contract. No gratuity payment. You look within the contractors. There are contractors who did work under the People's National Movement in 2021 who are still outstanding payment. And even within the current THA setup, you have your cultural performance artists. I saw on Calypsonian social media, people who provide normal service to the THA, whether they have a festival, etc. They are saying, I saw a post where a young lady is complaining about why we have to wait so long after we provide the service to get paid, and why we have to always come on Facebook to cuss to get we money. Why, when you all want the service, you all don't have to make noise to get it. We give you the service. So it is about really Tobagonians and the interests of Tobagonians not being prioritized. And that is the issue on the ground across the board. And this is why Tobagonians are feeling the pain, because the things that matters to them most aren't being prioritized.
All right. Feeling the pain. There's the mindset that nothing is happening. The place is at a standstill. You hear that?
You hear that?
There was within recent time under different administration, you had what you call development projects. I think Guba Hochoi Charles would have started that, and it continued during the PNM and so on. What happened? Why there are no are there development outside of the 5 on 5 off? What development provided was sustainable employment for a very long time, because they would move from area to area, and those workers were eventually transferred into works department, becoming so. What became of that, and why hasn't there been advocacy or anybody advocating for that to return for sustainable employment? And that generated or had the money going around, because the lady would come and sell she food, they'll pay her by the end of the fortnight. Talk to us about the whole concept of that development project that used to be part of Tobago's development.
So, Brother B, as you would know, and that is important, because what would have happened, especially with the development project is that it gave people a sustainable source of income. It also meant that all the little irritants in the community was taken care of. So a drain, a bridge, retaining wall, etc. That was being done in the community by community people, etc. As you would recall, when the current administration came in, they started with this so-called audit and was basically insinuating that in these programs created a number of challenges and so forth. We haven't heard anything about those audits thereafter, except that it made for good political soundbite at the time. So those things were put aside, and what we see, so it's not that development projects aren't happening, but those projects are happening in a way that it is excluding Tobagonians for the preference of contractors coming from outside. I will give you one example. There's a RFP that went out for the construction of a preschool. Preschool is bricks and mortar, roof, basic thing. $7 million, Brother B. And to my amazement, no Tobago-based contractor was selected for that project. So what that means, in fact, it was given to a contractor from Quite Point, Lisa Scoover, all right, to come to Tobago, bring their workers, bring all their materials, bring their equipment to come to build in Tobago a preschool in Corland. We have the lighting of the playing field up at Louisdor. Brother B, same thing. Project being done by a Trinidad contractor. And we are not saying that Trinidad contractors shouldn't have opportunities in Tobago. But we are saying things as basic. You telling me no Tobago contractor can build a preschool? No Tobago contractor can build a lit playing field, can do lighting of playing field. It was being done before. And it's the same thing with the development works. These works were being done by Tobagonians in the development program, who after a while would have been, as you rightfully point out, matriculated into the full daily paid setup. And so you had, it was like a movement. Yeah.
And this is where people like you come in as opposition. If you are aware of all these happening, where's your voice?
But hold
on, here I'm asking, right? So, because I know what development did for people in Tobago, it provided, quote unquote, the ordinary poor people who have a little skill. Sometimes they go in there as laborer and come out as builders. Why have we been silent? Why have the opposition been silent on that, so as to allow it to turn into a contractual arrangement? In some cases, the ordinary carpenter may willingly want to do this project, he can, but he may not have all the tools and all the whatever to get the job done. Can we return to that? Because as again, I'm going back to this, and we can't ignore this and make the excuse that it's okay because the contractor will get rid of all the headache and so on. We need to go through the headache, because what it provided, it was employment, sustainable employment. On Friday, the fella can't wait. Miss Jean coming down, or Miss Peters coming down to collection money from the foreman, that he would collect all them fellas' money who owe she for the meal for the week. And the money was spinning around.
Yes.
They come in town and they want a little sneakers and so on. The fellas selling the little sneakers, getting fellas when they get paid from development. Yes. That is what I know development did. We have been silent on that. When I say we, the public. But the opposition have its role to play to demand that projects like that return. What are the pros and cons? Why it is not workable? If it's not workable, if it's not as what it was, they would go about and see what need a retaining wall and send the whole crew there. Our wall going down by me in the net there was constructed by the last set of that. So what is it that has prevented why the opposition was not very vocal, so as to have and demand that return to the public?
Well, Brother B, I wouldn't accept that we weren't vocal. In fact, we have attempted in many ways, through motions in the House, through public advocacy, etc., to point to the Chief Secretary the errors of his ways and how these policy decisions are in fact hurting Tobagonians. In fact, it was the Chief Secretary who made the argument that Tobago receives 4 cents of every dollar. And we are saying, if you understand the value of that, that Trinidad has 96 cents to say about Trinidad, and the 4 cents that come to Tobago should really be directed to Tobago people in the main. And you as the Chief Secretary still decides that we are not going to prioritize doing development work where we can pull in ordinary Tobagonians, the young man who just come out of school and looking for opportunity and those kind of people. We prefer to find a way to get 2 cents of that 4 cents to leak out of Tobago, and that is the challenge. So we as a PNM, we cannot force the current administration to see the value in investing in Tobago people. But we can guarantee Tobagonians going forward that those very things that really build Tobago and Tobagonians will return. And that is what we are going to guarantee to Tobagonians going forward.
All right, so let's get it now into the budget 2026. Obviously, Mr. Thomas, a representative for Tobago East, would have said that he had a conversation with the Prime Minister about the Tobago allocation. And he's demanding that Tobago gets all that it's asked for, 4%, 4 point.
We asked for 5.5%, which
right.
is $3.7 billion.
Yes. How realistic is that given the economic situation in the country? Do you anticipate? And then they could say, all right, let me show Tobago that they will get the highest amount for this budget so as to prove a point. But realistically, from a budgetary or from an economic standpoint, it may not be realistic.
Well, Brother B, the first point to recognize is that there was a bill passed in the Parliament. Two bills brought to the Parliament. One was passed, which is the Tobago Island Government Bill. And that was passed by the support of the PNM, which in that bill guarantees Tobago 6.8%. So that in fact is law. It's just not enforceable law because it needed the supporting bill, which is a constitution amendment bill, to give it life. So therefore, there is something documented that allows as a precedent for the current government to use as a marker, which is the 6.8%. So therefore, we ought not be begging again to get close to 6.8% because there was a whole process that went through, that was approved, and that is where the focus of the conversation should be going for Tobagonians, letting the government know, hey, this thing was passed. It was debated in the Parliament, it was passed, and therefore we should, in fact, be guided by that very bill that was passed, 6.8. However, Tobago asked for 5.5. I am hearing the Secretary of Finance now saying that she's willing, after conversations with the Minister of Finance, to accept 5% of the budget. And I'm saying, when she made the claim, she said in the House that she would accept nothing less than 5.5% because to do that will be to continue the historical injustice against Tobago. And therefore, I find it passing strange that having held that position in June, that you will now revert to saying, well, I will take 5%. And it's not simply about how much Tobago get, but the other question is, how do we use what Tobago get to the benefit, again, of the people and the island? Do Tobagonians, after getting, let's say, 5%, which is about $3 billion, does that mean that I still have to wait for my gratuity? Does that mean I still, when I provide a service, have to wait months before I get it? The small man who's singing his song, and after he's spending time in the studio investing, I saw one Calypsonian saying it cost them $13,000 to produce music, and yet to get the little Kankata, the little 10,000, 20,000 prize money, you're waiting almost a year. Will Tobagonians be prioritized in whatever allocation we get?
All right, so, and that is where, all right, so let's prioritize from a visionary standpoint.
Yes.
You are the government in waiting. What would you do with, let's say we get the 3 million or the 3 billion? What is priority number one in your view? and I want to talk, I'm bringing the investment element so that we stop going and beg Trinidad. And I throw in this in the mix because I think it's the quickest and the fastest way for us to earn our own. We have a quarry up there that the chairman is now a senator. And you have to ask, where is the quarry? I haven't heard from you on that, or because you are the opposition. And if we have to seriously move away from the dependency syndrome, it means, therefore, we have to look for alternatives to earn on we own as to better our circumstance. Let's bring that into perspective. You being the government in waiting, what is the vision for sustainable earnings or revenue earning, and of course, how we can benefit the people of Tobago?
So Brother B, I understand that quarry can in fact generate in terms of revenue over 20 million US a month if run efficiently. And therefore, and sometimes I know a lot of people will pay attention to what happens in the House, but come October, we actually have a question filed to the Secretary of Infrastructure as to what is happening with the $60 million investment that they indicated they were going to put into the quarry as to achieve that kind of revenue generation. And that question would be answered because my information is, at this time, the quarry is not meeting the expectation as the potential it have in terms of production. The quarry requires investment. So priority number one, as you said, looking at those very things that can generate revenue for Tobago, the quarry being one, and doing the necessary investment. So it needs investment into a new crusher, which we were told was going to be done since 2023. We are in 2025, and my information is that has not yet been done, and the question is why? Brother B, the other thing is you have agriculture and the agro-processing sector, which if we had the packing house operational and the agro-processing facility up at Goldsboro running, it would have meant Tobago would have been generating, in diversifying its economy in terms of how we manufacture dasheen flour and all those things. Remember there was a big talk about that. Where is that agro-processing facility 4 years later? We don't have it. And that was part of the diversification drive. When it comes to tourism, and we are saying if we make the investment by ensuring that we have the incentives for the flights to come, because you're seeing in Barbados, which is half an hour away from us, is now declaring that the United States is their #1 source market. And you have to ask yourself, if Barbados, which is only 30 minutes away, could have all these Americans coming down to visit Barbados, why not Tobago? If Grenada is doing it, why not Tobago?
Right.
If St. Vincent is doing it. So it's about how do we utilize what we have to expand the Tobago economy.
Right. Very good. What you outlined in the varying sectors is investment in these sectors. That is what is required. So let's say that we are allowed to borrow. Let's say that we fall below the 3 billion that we are anticipating, and we are allowed to borrow. When you borrow, there's interest to pay, and there's the commitment to pay back the debt, if we are allowed to do that.
Yes.
So which of those is the best investment to make for so that we can yield the profits? And which, in your view, would be the most, which is the best one of them? You mentioned the quarry, agriculture, tourism. Which of those would be the best or the best advised to invest in? Right. So we were at the point where investment, let's say we get the 3 billion that we're asking for, and we're talking about investment. He mentioned agriculture, tourism, and of course, industrial activities as far as the quarry is concerned. And there was that. So which of those should we invest? Let's say we intend to make money for ourselves. Which of those would be the most, the best one to invest in? at this juncture?
Well, the quarry, of course, is a natural mineral that we get. The stone, of course, is demanded across the world and is quite lucrative. And therefore, as I said, that is a quick win for Tobago because you already have the quarry and all you require is just the capital injection, investment to upgrade the plant so that it can crush efficiently and produce the stones in a more efficient manner that will ensure that you can export. And because the markets are there ready and available, you have Guyana where development is happening rapidly right next door, etc. So that is something, and you have to ask yourself, why have we not been doing it for the last 4 years? You would recall Spell was basically transformed to achieve just that, to be one of the drivers of Tobago's economy. And that's why you created the company itself and separated so that you can have it running as a sort of private enterprise where the focus is revenue generation. That was done under the PNM. And it seems as everything that we would have developed, we are going backwards rather than forward, because you're hearing now spell where we had eliminated truckers having to line up in the morning early and so forth. Now truckers are back to square one where sometimes it's days they are waiting to get materials. And if we can't supply materials and provide materials for domestic youths, then you could imagine when you get the kind of demand, because I understand when they went to Ghana, for example, and Mr. Jakande, and when the folks from Ghana said one of their concerns were whether we were able to produce the kind of demand that they would want in a consistent way. Because, as you know, Ghana is a very big place, and the amount of materials they would need, they were very concerned as to whether we had the capacity. So the point is, there's already a ready market, but it is whether we have the capacity or the will to, in fact, do what is necessary to crush the stones to have it available for the market.
All right, so let's bring the will, and we have the Minister of Energy. I don't know if that falls under his portfolio, but quarries and the environment, whoever minister is responsible. Now, Mr. Minority Leader, the Prime Minister have not yet visited Tobago since April 18th?
28th.
28th, right. 18th maybe, or 28th. I hear you, like you have no problem with that. Now, and I'm saying all of this because if it is that we have opportunity for investment, if we are not having those conversations with the Prime Minister, as in having her present in Tobago, then we have to wonder how interested or how concerned she is about the people in Tobago and the possibility. Here it is, you are raising an opportunity for progress as to make that investment happen. You just spoke about the will. The absence of the Prime Minister in Tobago, is that bothering you? Is that affecting you? Do you hear that in the public? Why are we so quiet? You yourself suffering from closed mouth syndrome, Mr. Morris? Speak to me.
Brother B, so you would recall, we were told, and sometimes, you know, I wonder whether the media just take the song by some and the things that we advocate about and just put it to the side. But the Chief Secretary told us about 3 months ago that the Prime Minister was visiting Tobago. That never happened. I've seen the media interact with the Chief Secretary since then, and no one has asked the Chief Secretary what is happening with that meeting that you told us that the Prime Minister was coming to Tobago to have. You would also recall we saw a photo, that is all we got, a photo with the Chief Secretary and the Leader of Assembly Business at the home of the Prime Minister, and they said discussions were had. We have not seen anything materialize of any value to suggest that that meeting was taken seriously. And we continue to clamor. For example, I expect and I hope that coming out of this budget, one of the things that the Minister of Finance will do is declare definitively the date when the airport will be open. Because that is something we are no longer going to accept a time. And I'm saying anything after December the 6th will be a failure on the part of this current administration. And therefore, I expect not a timeline anymore, but we must, coming out of that budget presentation, get a date when that
I was
airport...
coming to that. You jumped the gun. But no, since you're gone, but let me just finish with this. Because we see, I don't know, I sometimes feel as...
But Brother B, and you know, we have to make the comparison because you see sometimes, you know, I just always say we are our own enemy. We had a prime minister who is Tobago born, and you didn't have to beg him to come to Tobago. He was here almost on a regular basis. In fact, even with this current administration who tried to demonize him, he also made himself available to, in fact, he invited them, bring the whole cabinet up to sit with them and talk with them. We have not seen this prime minister made such a gesture to this current administration, and therefore we all have to ask ourselves if the prime minister is only the prime minister for Trinidad.
Great. Well, I'm glad you now start to talk. And you don't need to be prompted by any presenter on television, because it is a responsibility of the Prime Minister to have regular meetings with the Chief Secretary. And now that we got that clear, I hope to hear from you again until she makes it a duty to be present in Tobago. And Tobagonians must demand that. Moving on. Let's go now to the airport. So the Chief Secretary and his contingent went to the airport. You said you weren't invited. And they had their lookabout or their walkabout. You just said, which I was going to ask, this budget presentation, obviously it cannot open because there are certain, we need to know, what is the status of the airport? Is there needed for a budgetary allocation, or should central government take that under its wings, given that it was a central government project? I want to hear from you. What do you advise, or what recommendations do you make? You just said you are demanding a date for this airport to be open. Give us as you go forward, how and what do you need to speak to? Do we demand that it's central government complete the project? Do you demand an allocation from the budget to have it completed if need be? What is your position on the airport?
So, Brother B, I just would reiterate that we are demanding a date, and the date must not exceed December 6th, because we were told when the soft opening commissioning happened that it only required a couple more months to get certain things, certain certification, etc., lined up. So it means that the plans were there to operationalize that airport in July, and therefore governments change, and all of a sudden we are seeing a sort of lackadaisical approach to the opening of this airport. I'm asking myself, this Chief Secretary, Brother B, we all saw him, we all heard him, we all recognized that he was willing at that time to make noise for Tobago, and all of a sudden, the man that is really the face of Tobago, or to be the face of Tobago, championing Tobago's cause, he has gone missing. All of a sudden, as we just say, turned momo. And there's so many important issues. I see this issue of the fishers. I'm saying it really... I am perplexed as to how someone that was so vocal before has gone so silent on the things that matters the most to us, one of which is that airport. We deserve a date. All of Tobago deserve to know, when will we be able to see flights taking off from that new terminal?
All right, we all eagerly anticipate, and I would hope that you don't stop asking the question after you come off a Rise&Shine, because we need to have that open. He himself, the Chief Secretary, that is, walked through the airport and would have identified. And I want to come to this though. What was a bit upsetting to me, because I myself into the construction industry for my electrical, I take on contract already, so I know. Now, if for some reason, let's say I'm using this as an analogy, husband and wife build the house, and before the house complete, they have contractors who are doing the job. You have your electrical, you have your plumbing, you have everybody who there. And the house built between the husband and wife. During almost completion, the husband and wife have a big divorce. The project has to continue. Whether the funding is coming from both of them or whatever, the job cannot stop. All of a sudden, abrupt, people resign, the contractor gone, and so on, because there's a change of God. Let's say he married somebody else and the project must be completed, and in some cases you have maintenance aspect of your contract, so that for 5 months after or a year after, in the event that you have a bad light in your bathroom, the electrician have an obligation, after he get check and so on, because you have what you call warranty maintenance. In the event that something happens, he's still supposed to go. This airport, as the Prime Minister, the PNM passed, the board resigned, the NITCO or whoever is responsible, gone away. We don't know what happened to the Chinese railroad construction. Did they go their way as well? Or did they complete the job? And these are the questions we need to find out. And we, the people, cannot suffer as a result of a government change. If that is the case, then the contract or to finish the job must be completed by law. And somebody has to insist on that. Where are you on that? Have we done the investigation to find out whether railroad sector gone back China? What has happened to the project? And that's my question.
Brother B, the point is governance is a continuum. And
exactly.
Governments ought to recognize that as well. And therefore, not because this thing was done by the PNM means I now have to stall it and create this kind of, unnecessary delay. Because that is what it is. Because the contractor remains in place. The project manager, which is NITCO, remains project manager. It's just that simply that the board may have changed, but the technical people remain there as far as I know. And therefore, the only thing that has changed in a fundamental way is the government. And therefore, this is why I am holding them squarely responsible for this unnecessary delay where we are in October approaching a carnival when we should have had that airport ready to welcome the world and show off in a sense and let people say as they fly in to be able to get something new, because we have not had anything new and anything of any significant development for quite some time. And therefore, this would have been a perfect opportunity to showcase to the world that Tobago is actually turning the corner and really serious about tourism.
Excellent. All right. So let me go now to October Carnival, the absence of the secretary, the new secretary, who was supposed to be feeling the pain.
Yeah, we're feeling the pain.
Yeah. So let me talk. Right, so the absence of the Zoisha Hackett, she's in Barbados, attending something for the next 2 weeks or something to that effect. Why are you laughing? But we coming. No, all right, so, and then we had the conversation before as to what led to why the shift. Obviously, there was fallout between Tashia Boris, who was then the secretary, and stakeholders, leading to Zoisha Hackett being secretary now. However, she's absent. October Carnival is right here. Are we convinced that, and then she's saying the chief secretary is responsible for making the transition. Where are your thoughts on that?
Brother B, sometimes I really believe these people believe that the rest of us are fools and they could just sell we anything, we gullible, and we'll just run with it. Because if you look at the series of how things unfolded and the justification, this same chief secretary is the one who told us that the reason why he made the temporary appointment, because he himself didn't want to have to deal with these things. And yet you approve the temporary secretary, and I call her the secretary for Carnival, because that's what is it. The appointment was made to basically separate the Secretary of Tourism from the stakeholders who they both couldn't see eye to eye. And you brought on this person to really lead the charge, and all of a sudden this person pick up and jump on a plane, gone to a conference while you have Carnival still to be planned. There are a number of issues still outstanding, even the issue of CAL, and not just CAL, but access to Tobago for Trinidadians to come, whether by fast ferry, the sea bridge or the air bridge. That has not been properly sorted out. CAL has not yet announced any predictable new flights, so people still are in a quandary as to will they add flights or will they not. Nobody knows. And you have all these issues because there's an appetite for people to come, but they don't have the access. And therefore, you would think that the secretary would sit down by her desk and do the work to what she was appointed. Yet she's out in Barbados in a conference, and we don't even know in a real way who is really overseeing the carnival. We hear is the chief secretary, but if we didn't ask the question, and you keep asking but is I what to ask? I hear the secretary out. Who is managing? Not a word was said. Did you know that she was out? Did you see any press release or anything? No, and that is kind of flip-flop governance that we have in Tobago. It's like muddy pot, Brother B. It is almost because you are being told today, this is the person to manage this thing. This is the person that I have my trust repose, trust that could get it done. And then all of a sudden, for a whole entire week with Carnival, 3 weeks away, this person leaves the jurisprudence, leaves the island, and basically abandon their responsibility. Brother B, what are we doing in this place?
All right, so if we go, I want to thank you. In closing, what would you want to say to the general public in closing?
Well, it's about us as Tobagonians recognizing that really and truly, for the last 4 years, if you do the comparison, we are no better today than we were on December 6, 2021. We gave these folks an opportunity to govern. They asked for an opportunity. We have watched them. And we are feeling the pain, and therefore it is now our responsibility to take back Tobago into our hands.
Is the PNM ready for a THA election? The bell might ring anytime now.
Brother B, the PNM is about bringing a brand new, bold vision to Tobago that is about really Tobago-focused, Tobago-centric, and placing the dreams, aspirations, desires, and interests of Tobagonians first. It's just like what the Prime Minister said, and I agree with her. Trinidad and Tobago first, so in Tobago we are saying Tobago first.
The people are saying you can't win the election with your leader presently. They're saying that you should be leader of the PNM Tobago. How do you feel about that?
Brother B, absolutely not. We have a leader that is experienced, that would have served as Chief Secretary, and if you do the comparison between his time and the current Chief Secretary, it's chalk and cheese. So I think Tobagonians would have seen Mr. Dennis as Chief Secretary, seen as a young man how he had led responsibly, and therefore the choice would be easy and the choice is clear.
All right. Okay. Very, very diplomatic and so on. Well done.